Steeler Fury.
First and goal at the 9. Offense back to pass. Looks right, he's got for a touchdown. Davis to Parker. Makes a man miss, he's got the corner. He's inside the 30. He's another man. He's got the 20, 15, 5. Touchdown. Throws it up for home. He's got it. He comes down to the end zone. It's a touchdown. Pittsburgh Steelers football.
SteelerFury.com.
What's the haps, Steeler Nation? Hello to you from Canada, the Great White North. This is Bradshaw to Ben, joining you for the Week 12 edition of the Steeler Fury podcast. SteelerFury.com is a website devoted to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we also have pregame features like the weekly Steelers Gospel, pregame analysis, and also postgame features like the weekly Steelers Report Card and also the Monday Evening Quarterback. Come join us at SteelerFury.com. If you're a Steeler fan, you won't regret it. This week on the show, we'll talk with staff writer Iron City about some of his thoughts on the state of the Steelers, and we'll also go to our regular feature with writers Hardnosed and FC, and they'll talk about some questions about the Steelers and San Diego matchup. Later, we'll pick some NFL picks, and our experts will give you their thoughts on the result of this week's Cincinnati Bengals at Pittsburgh Steelers game on Thursday Night Football. First, we'll go around the NFL. Hey, it's not often I have kudos for the NFL. In fact, after last week's officiating debacle, I don't have a lot of great things to say about them, but I'll say one good thing about the NFL. The scheduling department did a very good thing this week, which is they scheduled the Steelers to play on Thursday, which is before the WPIAL playoff games at Heinz Field, and not on a weekend when Pitt is playing before them. So they get a chance to play on turf that at least isn't, if it isn't fresh turf, at least it's not as bad as it was going to be after Saturday. And then they send the Steelers on the road while they have a chance to heal the turf. So kudos to NFL scheduling. Speaking of NFL officiating, however, non-kudos to them. Hey, here's the thing about the overturned Troy Polamalu touchdown at the end of the game against San Diego. The only question I really have about it that's unanswered is, why was a booth review necessary? I mean, game decided, time ran out. Why even start to examine the call? There doesn't seem to be any reason to even look at the call, let alone overturn it. That was the perfect situation to say, it might have been something, but never mind. They put themselves in a situation where they could make a mistake that ended up costing a lot of people a lot of money and angering people at the NFL, giving the NFL a black eye, where they could have just walked away and no one would have been the worse for it. So non-kudos to NFL officiating. Hopefully, I'd like to think this is the kind of thing that doesn't happen all the time, but it does seem to be that there's a certain amount of this in the NFL, and there's just nothing they can do to get rid of it without all the instant replay reviews and booth reviews you can come up with and rule changes you can come up with. They still make mistakes. They seem to make a lot of them in Pittsburgh Steelers games for some reason, unfortunately. Moving on, I know I've been following the last couple of weeks this Green Bay, Minnesota thing with non-offense touchdowns. In other words, kick returns, punt returns, blocked punts, blocked field goals for touchdowns, interceptions returned for touchdowns, etc. Not only does Green Bay have the most in the NFL, they added to that this week, and Minnesota has given up the most. They managed not to add to their NFL-leading 9 non-offensive scores allowed, although since the league uses replay to take those away at the end of games now, they may have given one up, but we'll never know. At any rate, Minnesota has given up 9 touchdowns that weren't scored by offense. They have only scored 2 of those this season. Green Bay, conversely, has scored 9 non-offense touchdowns and have given up only 1 score of that nature. You can see why Green Bay is ahead of Minnesota in that division. Among other reasons. Now moving to the Steelers and Cincinnati matchup for Thursday night. Hines Ward has 2 games in a row with over 100 yards receiving. He's only done that a couple times in his career, and he's only once done that in 3 consecutive games in his career, and that was back in the pass-happy Tommy Maddox era of 2002. The Steelers' red zone defense, touchdowns allowed, they are number 1. The Steelers' red zone offense, touchdowns scored, they are 4th in the NFL. Pretty amazing when you consider the problems they've had on offense. One of them generally has not been scoring touchdowns in the red zone. To put them in comparison, Cincinnati is 23rd on offense and 26th on defense in the red zone. Steelers linebackers James Harrison and Lamar Woodley have combined for 21.5 sacks this season. That's on pace for an interesting record. There's only one tandem of rushers in the history of the NFL, since they've been keeping the stat anyway for sacks, who are the only teammates to both have 15 or more sacks in the same season. That'd be the year that Chris Dolman had 21 and Keith Millard had 18 for the Minnesota Vikings. That was 1989. So kudos to Harrison and Woodley, trying to go where few have gone before. All right, and in the last meeting between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, the Steelers, of course, scored 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns to run off with a 38-10 victory, one of their most complete wins of the season. The Steelers have won 3 in a row in this series and 4 of the last 5 games between the two teams. That's in large part to third down and fourth down conversions. During that span, the Bengals converted a first down on 42.4% of the possessions on which they reached third down. The Steelers converted 57.8% of those situations. They also have a huge advantage in rushing yards, almost twice as much. 178 attempts for 763 yards compared to 107 attempts for just 380 yards for the Bengals. What's the result of all that? Well, the Steelers have a huge advantage in time of possession in the last 5 games, 34-57 per game to Cincinnati's 25-36. That's almost a 10-minute advantage per game. And it's certainly done well to them as they've been 4-1 in those games. Time now to go to our SteelerFury staff experts to talk about their thoughts on the Steelers and Bengals this week. Okay, so we have with us, as usual, the author of the Monday Evening Quarterback. That'd be Hardnosed. How are you, sir?
All right.
And also the author of the Steelers Gospel at BFC. How are you tonight, sir?
I am godlike.
We've become a shtick now. I don't know.
No, we're just 2 superstitious fools.
See, that's what it is. Gotcha. Right on. Well, then I'll mention Canada again. That seems to be working.
Hey, there it is.
More or less. Okay. This will be the last podcast from Canada for a while.
Not if they win. You got to go back up there next week.
Yeah, exactly. I have to make the long trek. At least if I lived in Detroit, I could do that easily. I could just go across the bridge and come back. All right, but I'm a dark-skinned, bearded guy, so going across the border is like a 3 or 4 day adventure.
There you go.
All right, so
I know the feeling.
Speaking of border crossings, I'm not sure how to segue with that. Let's see. Who do we put? Oh, Cincinnati. Well, yeah, it's a border war of sorts. Cincinnati comes and visits the Steelers. FC, I'll start with you. Seemed like last week against the San Diego Chargers, the short passing game was working full on. The run game was working. Now, how do we turn that into points?
That is a very good question. Going to have to take some chances with the offense passing the ball down the field. No penalties. Can't have turnovers, can't have penalties. We had no turnovers last week, but the referees were throwing laundry all over the field whenever the Steelers on offense. And I understand 5 of those calls were pre-snap problems, but can't have... I have a problem with a few of the holds, but I can understand why they were called. You just have to execute the offense at a higher level.
Yeah, I thought one of the more telling things I read this week was that there was the same officiating crew that officiated New England St. Louis, during which they did not penalize New England for a single penalty in that game. It's very hard to believe, having seen them in action on Sunday.
And I understand that most referees do a fantastic job. Our board founder, SteelerFury, is a referee. He referees high school and college wrestling, and he does a great job. But, just like everybody, like every doctor, every engineer, you're going to find, a screwed-up bunch. And unfortunately, I believe the Steelers found a screwed-up bunch last week. He wasn't as bad as Still Luck at screwing up the coin flip, but it was still pretty bad.
Well, you may not know this about me, but I actually officiated high school and such football in Western Pennsylvania in the WPIAL for 12 years. So,
wow.
Of course, not anymore. A long time ago, I started. I was the youngest sanctioned WPIAL football official at one point. So, at any rate, I have empathy for what those guys do, and it's like being a cop. You have to make decisions sometimes. You don't always enforce the letter of the law, but sometimes enforcing the letter of the law is the only way you can do the right thing. And so I have empathy for them, but man, it's like George Carlin used to say. Most imagine the average person's intelligence, and then realize that half the people in the world are stupider than that. That's kind of the thing. It's like the average NFL official is and then the guys below that. Anyway, I won't dwell on that. But at any rate, that's I generally look at it empathizing for their position, but then also I know there's certain things you just can't miss.
Right.
It's almost impossible to miss a face mask. Holding's one of the more obvious things, but they've, to their officials, to their credit, the rules are so goofy that enforcing them is really, damn near impossible. It requires a judgment call on every play, which is crazy.
Right, you're allowed to grab cloth inside the shoulder pads as an offensive lineman now in the NFL, according to the rules. As long as your hands don't go outside, you can grab 2 handfuls of cloth and drop directly to the ground. And according to the rules, that should not be holding as of 2007.
Yeah.
As funny and crazy as that sounds, I posted the rule up at our board.
Yeah, to those of us who weren't even allowed to have open hands when we learned how to block, that is definitely crazy. Anyway, all right, so I'm ancient. Hardnosed, we'll go on to leave the officiating away leave it alone for a second. Willie Parker returned, and that seemed to give the Steelers a spark. How would you evaluate his day and his value to this team?
Well, I mean, you look at his day, and the biggest thing that Willie Parker did was he put Ben into some very favorable situations, and that's been kind of what I've been preaching for the last 3-4 weeks. That Willie Parker gives you that dimension, and Moeldy Moore doesn't necessarily do that. Parker was really patient. He didn't have a run longer than 12 yards the whole night, and then he ends up with 115 yards. That's a guy who's just consistently taking what's there and really giving you those hard-earned runs that Willie Parker traditionally just doesn't get credit for. But, I'll tell you what, going back to last year, same deal. Willie Parker didn't have a run over 32 yards the entire year, and yet he was leading the league in rushing when he went down. So he's underrated as far as his ability on first down to simply get 3 or 4 yards and make 2nd and 6 unpredictable. And I thought he did a great job against San Diego, and I bet you he has a huge night tomorrow night.
Yeah, well, that would be great. FC, speaking of the rushing and passing game working, the offensive line appears to be, dare I say, gaining cohesion as a group. Do you agree?
I do. They look more comfortable working with each other, and the offensive line is like a linked chain. If one link goes bad, the whole thing's going to bust. So, I've seen improvement. There's still plenty of room for, a lot more improvement. Unfortunately, I think there's plenty of talent there outside of Willie Colon, who I'll continue to complain about. But I believe the Steelers can win games with Willie Colon at right tackle. But they have to be, fundamentally, solid as a group. You can't have, 4 great blocks and, I'm a Max Starks fan, so I'm going to call it Max Starks, and Max Starks whiff on a block, or, 4 great blocks and Chemo whiffs on a block. That's just going to, destroy a play. And last week they worked more as a unit. And, if they continue to progress, hopefully by the playoffs, they'll be we working as a fine oil machine, and maybe they can, win a couple games.
Are you going back on your contention from last week that the Steelers can't win a Super Bowl with Willie Colon at right tackle?
I am to a point. I just look at these other teams. I just read a power rankings with the New York Giants rated number 1, and no one's going to tell me that the Giants are a better football team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I watched that game. Maybe that was just that one game, but the Steelers, I believe, dominated the game. I understand that they didn't win on the scoreboard, and the Giants ended up winning, and the Steelers blew a fourth-quarter lead, but I don't think the Giants are a better team than us. I'm not impressed with the Tennessee Titans. I think the Steelers can beat the Panthers or any team out of the NFC. No team from the AFC scares me. The NFL is just wide open. This is as wide open as I can ever remember the NFL.
Yeah, which is a year where you really want to do something because you have the opportunity, right?
You can steal a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
And as funny as that sounds, you don't steal a Super Bowl. Steelers could steal a Super Bowl this year.
Yep, no doubt.
So, Hardnosed, for a game where you wouldn't necessarily know it if you only saw the box score and didn't watch it, one Troy Polamalu had an unbelievable game. Is he the best safety in football right now?
I completely would. I'm going to choke. I'd say he's the best safety in football right now. Some of that is the way he's played this year, and he's completely back. SteelerFury.com gets a pretty bad rap for an article that we put out in 2006 naming Troy Polamalu the GOAT of the year. That was put out by SteelerFury. I signed off on it. I believe FC signed off on it as well.
I absolutely did.
We were in agreement on that, and a lot of people think we should eat crow right now, and I'm more than happy to. The Troy that you see on the field right now is not the Troy that was playing 2 years ago, and I think he'd be the first guy to admit that. I think Dick LeBeau would be the second guy to admit that. So, it's great to have him back. It's great to have him making plays, and, just an unbelievable interception, and the way he's playing the run, the way he's flying around recklessly. He's back. There's nobody else playing better. Ed Reed's had a beat-up year in Baltimore. Sean Jones over in Cleveland is in danger
overrated,
being benched or cut or something. I mean, that guy's just fallen off the map. LaRon Landry's not there yet. I mean, other than Adrian Wilson, there's nobody else. So I'd say, yeah, Troy head and shoulders above anybody else.
Since Hardnosed is a vegetarian, I'll eat his portion of the crow for the board, and I'll even take responsibility away from Ed, who's the one that wrote that article, because I was the one that was, really bitching and complaining about Troy's play, and I'm more than happy to eat the crow. He deserves to at least win a half of the defensive MVP this year with James Harrison, and I could not have been more wrong. About Troy Polamalu.
I don't want to dwell once again on the officiating error at the end of the game, but to me the biggest thing, the biggest saddest thing about it was that they wouldn't be showing replays of that play over and over and over again to just show how remarkable Troy Polamalu actually is. The play he made on the touchdown that ended up not counting at the end of the game is just ridiculous. You see people throw the ball around like that all the time, and it's always some mayhem. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But just to see what he did, it just completely blew up the play, was amazing to me. Just a follow-up on that question, and that is, his injury situation in 2006. Is there an analogy to that in Ben's injury situation this year? In other words, you're looking at Troy's play in 2006. He was gutting it out with not 100%, and in effect costing the team. And for a stretch there, it seemed like Ben was gutting it out and costing the team.
Oh, no doubt. They're very similar situations. And then, you also have the 2006 Ben, who was in the same situation as Troy, gutting it out, probably shouldn't have played a couple games that year. So, I'm not going to make physical excuses for Ben anymore. He's played 2 straight games. He's played all 60 minutes. He hasn't gotten further injured. I understand that he's got, problems that aren't going to heal until the off season. Well, welcome to the NFL. That's every guy that's out there in some way or another. The guy's healthy enough to play. I'm done with the injury aspect of Ben. It's on him, and a lot of the interceptions that he's thrown were thrown with his head, which isn't injured. They weren't thrown with his arm. So, does he have less of a deep ball? Well, no doubt. Actually, just watched a video the other day of Ben back at Miami of Ohio. There's that famous Hail Mary pass that he literally threw 75 yards in the air. He couldn't do that right now, not even close. But, he zipped that ball around in those short passing situations, that's for sure. So I don't know how much of this the last few weeks has been a lack of arm strength with Ben. I'm beginning to think it was some wind, some weather, and some shoulder soreness all together. I don't think it's going to be a reason for Ben not to be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback moving forward.
Cool. Well, FC, moving to the other side of the ball, Cincy's offensive line, which is definitely offensive, as bad as they were, they lost some more guys on Sunday. They couldn't do much even before that, and now they face the number 1 defense in the league. Are those guys just going to call in sick this week?
I don't expect them to call in sick, but I think they're screwed. I did not know Scott Kustra played at the University of South Carolina before I wrote I believe he went to South Carolina before I wrote my article yesterday, and I pride myself on being pretty up on the NFL. And the guy played up the road for me, and I didn't know who he was. Chances are a lot of people
saying something, yeah,
didn't know who he was. Anthony Collins, me and Hardnosed both kind of sort of liked this draft season.
Anthony Collins,
he loved him, and I kind of sort of liked him. But I wasn't ready to throw him to the lines against, Brett Kiesel and especially James Harrison in pass pro.
Anthony Collins is a project. Defensive lineman his first 2 years at Kansas, and then started as a junior for that team that was pretty good, and then came out. So, I liked him with the idea that 2 or 3 years from now he could be a player. But wow, welcome to the NFL.
And I will give Hardnosed credit. That's what he said the entire draft season this past February, March, and April. I actually agree, with his sentiment whenever he said that. So I'm not going to, if Anthony Collins is embarrassed like Winston Justice was a couple years ago against the Giants, I'm not going to throw Anthony Collins or Hardnosed under the bus because trust me, I've had some very horrible Walter Thomas type picks in my day. So getting back to the point, the Bengals offensive line they're going to struggle. They still are a massive group, but they're just not very good.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way to put it.
So Hardnosed, facing this, Cincinnati offense, which obviously doesn't have Carson Palmer, and the offensive line has struggles. The Steelers defense, having shut down the number one rushing offense, the number one rusher, and the number one passer in the NFL in the last month of games, you think there's a chance they get caught looking ahead to the mini bye and the date with New England? In other words, is this a trap game for them?
I think, it is a trap game. If they're not up for this game, they're going to have problems. There's two things that work in the Steelers' favor. Actually, let me make that three things. Number one, Thursday night game, national audience. They know that all their peers across the NFL are going to be watching this game. Believe it or not, that's a significant motivator as far as effort's concerned. When you get when you get a 1:00 game and you're competing against a bunch of other guys that aren't going to be watching, that's different. So national stage, that always brings things out. Natural rivalry game, AFC North, division rival. Usually teams get up for those games. Third one is Keith Rivers. This is going to be a talkative game. This is going to be an in-your-face game. I expect personal fouls, maybe both ways. I think that whole situation and the natural hatred between the Steelers and Bengals is going to make it really hard for the Steelers to come out limp. So it is a trap game, but I'm not worried about effort being a problem.
Actually, I expect Hines Ward to say, someone is chatting, talking to him, talking too much, running their mouth, for him to say to them, remember what I did to the last guy that was running his mouth? I shut his mouth. Okay.
I say my gosh, I completely 100% expect Hines Ward to smoke somebody. Within the first one, smoke them. Uh-huh. I have zero doubts in my mind. Yeah.
He has been looking at film all week trying to figure out who he can get.
Marvin White.
All right, well, let's move just quickly on to special teams. I'm going to say I told you so. I said the high snaps were a cause for concern. And having seen a couple of high snaps that almost cost the Steelers last week, I'm going to ask both of you a question. Which burns the Steelers first, a bad snap or a coverage breakdown?
Would you like to take this first, Hardnosed?
Sure. Neither. It's not going to happen.
I'm going to go.
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a liar, sir.
If I'm worried about anything, I'm worried about Justin Hartwig shotgun snaps more than
That's what I was just going to say. But if I have to take a guess, I'm going to take a guess that the Steelers are going to cut Paul Ernster. They're going to re-sign Mitch Berger during this 10-day break. And I think Rostowski might end up airballing one to the 55-year-old Mitch Berger, whose leaping ability is probably less than mine. And so if I had to take a guess, the coverage units look fantastic.
Yeah,
they are stuttering the coverage, meaning they're coming down in waves. And Lil Anthony Madison and Patrick Bailey and Fox are just making plays. And as I complained a ton about the coverage units, I want our special teams coach fired. And I changed my mind real quick.
Way better.
What's that?
It's way better.
Oh, God, way better. I don't knock on wood every time we kick the ball at this point. I was just like crossing my eyes and getting ready to say a Hail Mary if I was a religious type of guy, every time they kick the ball.
So the other side of it is, as long as Ernster's only punting the ball 30 yards, it's really hard to get a nice return on a 30-yard punt.
Exactly. He's terrible. I seen 8-year-olds at the pump, pass, and kick competition that would just kick his ass.
I said this earlier in the season. Tom Scolbani I think he's 56. I bet you right now he can outpunt Ernster.
I think Craig Colquitt screwing around at Tennessee earlier, during the spring, and he was pounding the ball. Pounding it barefoot.
Yeah, why not? Why not take a chance on a guy like that? Oh my God.
Is George Blanda still alive?
There you go.
Ray Guy lives in Augusta. I can have a talk with Ray Guy, see if I can get him, involved.
Speaking of things that are we going to see this or that? Yes or no? Are the Steelers going to pump out a wildcat formation at least once before the end of 2008?
No.
Yes.
See, I'm with you, Hardnosed. I say yes. You know why I say yes? I say yes because Well, not only that was like that sort of pre-read they did in the preseason, but the other thing about that is, you actually one of the reasons they say it can't work long term is that if your quarterback's on the field, they can ignore him as a receiver. And I'll be honest with you, if you just literally don't cover Ben, he can catch the ball.
He can catch the ball, no doubt.
Right, and he played wide receiver in high school
That's
and all
what I'm
that.
saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the reason I say that you may not see it is who's going to be, who's going to take the snap? Willie Parker. Then who? Okay.
And I think the reason we haven't seen it so far is he got hurt so early in the season.
Right.
No time to work it in. I think if now, the one thing is with his left arm in a harness, I don't.
Well, I'm saying you could have Ward take the snap, Parker next to him in the Ricky Williams role, and split.
You could have Ward taking the snaps.
I could see. That's a very good point, gentlemen. So maybe I might want to step off mine.
Is that something maybe you test out against the Bengals? Steelers have a long history of testing gadget plays against the Bengals,
and then reusing them against them later in the year.
But
right. Yeah, exactly.
But the funny thing is, is Mike Mularkey and Ken Wisenhunt were like shenanigan masters, and like Bruce Arians, I believe, we ran the one flea flicker, and like our other shenanigan play is like a draw of the bunch. There hasn't been a lot of outright creativity to the offense. I understand the offensive line is terrible, but we could have a little thinking outside the box.
Come on! He calls that fake wide receiver screen running play
that is true. I apologize,
what
sir.
What do you want? That's a gadget.
I believe Vince Lombardi ran that in 1968.
All right, well, that's good enough for this segment. We'll come back in just a bit, and we'll pick some NFL games and get your predictions on this week's Steelers-Cincinnati Bengals game. And now, once again, with us on the show is the author of the Steelers report card. That'd be Iron City IC. How are things in Cleveland?
Cold and snowy. We get the weather a day early from what the Steelers get, so we got the wet snow piling up out here, but it's football season, so it's about to be as expected.
Can't complain, and I'm in Saskatchewan. I'm in Saskatoon. It is football season up here.
Are you in an igloo?
I'm not in an igloo, although I will get to see the Grey Cup final, which I think is this weekend. So,
the Penguins in Minnesota are on right now. You should be getting good reception for that game.
I know. If only
up in the second.
If only I weren't talking to you right now. I'm kidding. Well, anyway, let's. We got a short week. Let's make it a short talk about what the Steelers are doing right and wrong right now. I'm going to start since we've been talking so much about Ben and the offensive coordinator. I want to start with the Steelers defense and just talk about a little bit of what you see when you look at the Steelers defense. Imagine yourself as a quarterback from the other team or offensive coordinator for the other team. What do you see? And are there weaknesses that you see that you think you can try to exploit, or are you just trying to survive?
Well, I tell you what, and that's a good question, and that's something that I really like to look at every week when I get a chance to rewatch the game, if I get a chance. Steelers stop the run phenomenally well, more than most other teams. They can do it with 6 and 7 guys, and that's a huge strength. That defensive line is such a huge strength. Now, if you're an opponent and you're trying to game plan against it, obviously everybody wants to they want to run the football and they want to control the clock and put points on the board. But knowing that you're not going to be able to do that probably against the Steelers, you got to come in and you got to figure out what else am I going to do to get around it? Where are the holes in the zones? They run the predominant cover 3. They like to move Troy around. They like to get Lawrence Timmons around in down and distance situations, and they like to bring the heat. Well, they're going to bring it from somewhere different every week, depending on the game plan, and that's where Dick LeBeau is just the magic man. That is just where the guy is head and shoulders above everybody else, because the way he can design everything and the versatility of a 3-4 defense versus a 4-3 defense, with having that extra athlete on the field as a linebacker, where you saw a lot this week, Woodley and Harrison in coverage. Most people are expecting the edge rush to come. They drop back. What happened? James Harrison, interception in the red zone. So an opponent coming in, he's probably going to each week he's going to see something that he hasn't seen on film yet this year. And as I mentioned earlier, Steelers like to play a lot of base cover 3, which by design is cushion with the cornerbacks. They play outside technique, which gives them with probably their outside foot forward, shoulder square to the quarterback. They got that triangle of vision. There's a triangle of vision to the quarterback, triangle of vision to the receiver. He's probably going to get his key off the tackle, for his run-pass key off the tackle. Well, you would think, in theory, there is that 7 to 10-yard cushion in front of the quarterback. That's the zone you could attack. Well, the versatility of the 3-4 defense allows somebody like Troy Polamalu to mug up over top of a guard, and then on the snap, he is that fast and that good enough where he can get and cover that flat area or outside the hash by the time the route's even run. Or the speed of Lawrence Timmons over Larry Foote, he can get to that vacated area that looks like there's a hole in the zone pre-snap. And that's the huge key over a guy like Lawrence Timmons from Larry Foote. Although Larry Foote does a great job in the run game, that's where we're hoping Lawrence Timmons takes us. Or the fact that we have such great outside linebackers, these guys can drop off the line of scrimmage also at the snap, as we've seen. Lamar Woodley had an interception against the Texans. James Harrison against this last game. And the versatility, James Ferrier does a great job dropping down the seam with tight ends. The versatility is just unbelievable. The New York Giants did a good job, I thought. They had a very well-designed game plan, I thought, coming in.
What was his short
throws? What they did was a lot of play action.
He got the ball. Eli got rid of the ball quickly, right?
Well, what happened, the Giants are a run team. They did a lot of play action. They sucked the linebackers up in between the guards with those run-first keys. And what they did is they released a fullback and they released a tight end out in the hash lot underneath those corners as a receiver ran a corner out. So those little hash, there's little seams in the outside the hash is open all day. But as far as what we have seen attacking this defense, you can see you can't get deep on it. They don't give up deep plays, and that's because of the cushions. That's because of the deep safety. So you don't see a lot of that. In theory, you should be able to have what's called a lot of 7 routes, which is the skinny post up the seam. In theory, it's supposed to be the receiver's his outside foot on his fourth step on his outside foot. He turns, the ball should be on the hash about 12 to 14 yards downfield. Against most teams, that's there. We try to run that a lot. That's the exact play that when we played Jacksonville the last 4 years, and they sit in that cover 3 shell that Rasheed Mathis jumps every time and goes for a touchdown. The Steelers linebackers are fast enough and have enough recognition skills where they get back and they take that away. We don't see a lot of that against the Steelers. With teams unable to run, that's why it's so dominant. You stop the run, they're forced to throw the ball, and then now the Steelers have 2 legitimate pass rushers, and this defense is just at the top of its game and the best I've seen in a decade.
You know, I said earlier in the year that when the Steelers were playing Philly, that this is what other teams feel like every week when they play the Steelers. You can be down by only 4 points, but it feels like it's an impossible task, right, to make up 4 points against the Steelers' D right now.
Well, absolutely, and that's something that we don't really take in mind. And this has crossed my mind recently, and how to put it in words is we look at our defense, Steeler defense, and what they do to opponents, and they just completely smother them. Well, knowing that, the Steelers' offense has also played some defensive units that has the same capability to smother an offense. They're that good. The Giants, Philadelphia, that was just a debacle. The Steelers weren't ready for that game. The Giants are a very good defense. The Redskins, Baltimore Ravens, they're very good defenses with similar abilities to make you one-dimensional, take the strengths of your game away, and make you so one-dimensional to the point where now you're playing with your weakness to win a game, and just as the Steelers do. So that's the strength of schedule factors a lot into how outstanding the success that the 7-3 record has shown so far, because they're not exactly playing an NFC West schedule this year. So we all know that other team has players that get paid too, and obviously no one's playing as well as Steeler defenses right now. But year in and year out, we know Baltimore, they're going to be stout in the run. These NFC East teams, they're fast. They have great shutdown corners. They get to the quarterback. They get you sideline to sideline. So that's just a tall order for the Steeler offense to handle. And the strength of schedule and the competition they've been facing definitely factors a lot into some of their struggles.
Well, last week the Steelers put up over 400 yards of offense, and you kind of look at those stats, and without looking at maybe the punting yardage or the penalties, you think they should be scoring more points. But as I like what Tomlin said today, he said, we aim to score one more point than the other team. That's always our plan. The question I have is, what do you think the Steelers' offense right now is on the right track? Then that will eventually result into points, or are you more concerned about the mistakes that they're making?
No, I think that they're in the process of turning around. I think getting Willie Parker back is definitely a huge key. We've seen the explosiveness that he can bring over a guy like Mewelde Moore, who's done a great job in a reserve role, but there's only one Willie Parker right now, and the guy makes the Pro Bowl for a reason. And he just has the burst to get the corner that few guys in this entire league have. And that little extra bit in the run game is really going to help. Mike Tomlin also made mention in his press conference that the offense is taking what a defense has given them. Early on, everybody was mugging up playing man coverage. They were going deep and having some success with it. Now everybody is playing what he termed an umbrella defense, which is basically their own unique version of a quarters or a cover four scheme, where the corners or everybody's playing more of a vertical zone instead of sideline. Sideline cover two obviously is middle. Each safety takes middle field to the boundary. Well, now there's four safeties basically that play front to back, that they play from basically 7 yards off the line of scrimmage to the goal line, and they take their lanes until the ball's in the air. And you're not seeing the Steelers with the ability to get deep. And the Steelers have shown in the past they have guys like Hines Ward, who has great route recognition skills and can find the soft holes in the zone. And Ben Roethlisberger is a guy that can thread a needle through a zone. He just needs the time. The recipe to beat him is not give him the time to beat you. And if teams are going to sit back in zone and they're going to drop 7 in coverage, he's going to pick most teams apart. And now we have gone through the run of the man cover teams. The Philadelphia Eagles with the 3 pretty good corners and the Redskins with the pretty good corners, who like to come up and they like to beat up the receivers to the line of scrimmage and not let them run free. Well, now we're facing a string of teams that like to allow you to get a free release off the line of scrimmage, similar to what the Steelers play, and they want your receivers to work in zone, and they have the feeling that they play with the mentality that we're better than you, our secondary is better than your receivers, and we're going to bring enough heat where they're not going to have enough time to get open. But the Steelers have been proven in the past that they can beat that, and we have a string of teams coming up through most of the rest of the season. They're going to play with that mentality, and I think by default things are going to get better. One thing we did see this past week, it was on a positive note, the Steelers moved the ball well between the 20s for the first time in a long time. I mean, effortlessly between the 20s these last 2 weeks. The red zone offense was uncharacteristically not very good. A lot of that's play calling, some execution.
They're number 4 in the league still in scoring touchdowns in the red zone, so it is uncharacteristic. You're right.
Right. Well, I'm just saying this past week against San Diego, it was uncharacteristically not very good. They were out of their element, because I know they have been good in the past, but in the San Diego game, they weren't as good as they had been. But conversely, they moved the ball well between the 20s. So we know that they can score in the red zone. We didn't know if they could move the ball consistently between the 20s, and I think now that they're going to be able to move the ball, they're going to start racking up some yardage and play with a little bit of a swagger once they get in the red zone. Maybe now they're finding that they have different options and goal line backs and short yardage carriers that I think it's only going to improve from here.
Speaking of the goal line offense, when's the last time that you remember seeing a play action pass, on a goal-to-go situation for the Steelers? Because it seems like they have forgotten that aspect. They were throwing the fades earlier, and then they tried to run the same running play over and over again. We even saw some of the, no empty backfield stuff. I can't remember the last play-action pass. Do you?
I can remember some. I can't remember any.
It's been a while.
I can't give you specific examples.
It's been a while, though, right?
I think one reason for that is you have to make a team respect your play action before a play-action pass is going to work. With I guess early on, when you look at Steelers on film and you hear, and you're sitting in a film room and your coach tells you Mewelde Moore running behind Darnell Stapleton, I don't think a lot of people respect that too much early on. Now when you hear the word Willie Parker in your game plan, your eyes are going to open up a little bit more, and I think your teams are going to have to start to respect it a little more. And again, it's not taking anything away from Wil anymore. He did a fine job for what he is. He's a 200-pound, 4'6", 40 third down back that plays with good awareness, and that's his best quality. But he's not going to get the edge like Willie Parker. He's not going to get skinny in a 16-inch gap and take it to distance like Willie Parker. But now that this element is back in the offense, I think there's some possibilities of that. Heath Miller was their guy on play action at the goal line. Heath Miller and Hines Ward. So that's an element that could be incorporated as we go forward if and when teams start respecting the play action of the Steelers. And to earn that respect, you need to be able to punch it in with the run game. And this is something they were unable to do all of last year, punch it in with the run game in the red zone, inside the 5, or especially at the 1. This year, the Steelers are 1 of 9 on 4th down. A lot of teams really still don't respect that short yardage run game. And once they can start earning respect, that's when the play action is there.
No, sure. I was just thinking, they ran the ball in for a touchdown twice in a row on the same play. One would think maybe the third opportunity would be a handy time to go for a play action fake. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, teams run this stuff, especially someone like the New York Giants and the Baltimore Ravens. And they make it seem so effortless at times. Why can't everybody just fake it to the fullback and dump it to the third tight end? Well, I would think that it should be that easy, but when not everyone is not everyone respects your short yardage run game, you're going to have those linebackers and DBs. They're going to release with those backup tight ends. They're going to release with Sean McHugh. I would think.
And the third tight end, we don't even have a third tight end.
Yeah. But with as bad as the Steelers' short yardage situation is, I don't know if can you waste a play trying to throw the ball to your fullback or trying to throw the ball to your third tight end when you need every inch you can get because you haven't been real successful at it in the past.
Yeah, good point. Well, maybe as they get healthier, they'll have a chance to incorporate that and add that to their arsenal. That should open things up a little, we hope. One more question for you, and that is, you mentioned that the schedule has been rough and may, in effect, make it a little bit easier as far as the defenses. Of the 3, kind of scariest teams remaining, that'd be New England, Dallas Cowboys, and Tennessee Titans. As far as the Steelers are concerned, I'm not asking you which of those teams is better than the others and so on. I'm saying as far as facing the Steelers is concerned, which of those teams is the worst matchup for the Steelers, and which do you think is the best matchup as far as the Steelers are concerned?
The next 4 games are actually very tough with New England, Dallas, Baltimore, and Tennessee. But the easiest matchup, and this sounds crazy, I think it's the Tennessee Titans. I really do. I don't see how the Tennessee Titans can score on Pittsburgh. Their bread and butter is the run game. They're not going to run the ball. Kerry Collins is a statue. He's not going to sit back there for 7 seconds and throw the ball to Justin Gage, who needs more than a double move to get open. He needs a triple move just to get open. That's not going to happen. That could be a 3-0 game. That could be a 3-2 game. Titans haven't really been affected by the big injury, or at least multiple big injuries. Kyle Vandenbosch has been out for a while. They haven't had the multiple big injuries like the Steelers have had. They are a very quiet 10-0 team. You could really make a case and say, did they peak too early, or is this who they are? Even though the game is in Tennessee, I don't see this game as being a huge problem for the Steelers, especially if they have to fight to get into the playoffs toward the end of the year when Tennessee has already been resting its players since week 12 or not playing them the entire game or with nothing to play for. Now, on the other side of that, it brings us to the toughest game. Well, this depends on what identity we see out of a few teams coming up. I don't really believe we saw the real Matt Castle when he threw for 450 yards the other night. New England is last I checked, we're a top 10 run team with Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. I'm not sure if that's a joke or not. The only reason he ever made a name for himself is because he ran behind Mike O'Hare at Ole Miss last year. And every time somebody got the left tackle Mike O'Hare on tape, he was the one running behind him. But the Patriots have always had the Steelers' number. Unfortunately, as much as the Steelers have always had the Jets' number, the Patriots have the Steelers' number. And it's almost like karma. It's in their head. I don't know what it is. There's some outlying force in that game. No matter what's going well, New England just has something. It's probably coaching is what it is over the Steelers, where it just always seems to be a tough game. I'm really not entirely worried about Dallas since they have to travel up here in the cold weather. The nation is focused on Tony Romo's pinky right now, and I'm glad because I've taken some press time off of some of the phenomenal things the Steelers defense is doing, and I would rather just keep that under the rug until they do something and actually finish before it. I guess what I'm trying to say is before too big of a deal is made out of their accomplishments.
Well, be nice to keep it.
Yeah,
under
I would
wraps.
definitely have to go with New England and the Bill Belichick factor.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I would have said Dallas maybe, but I'm with you. I like flying under the radar, and I prefer them to be under the radar until the final gun of the Super Bowl goes off, and then everybody can recognize what they've done. Right. That's what we hope for.
I just think the Steelers defense did so many good things last year, and when it was starting to become recognized in the media, it started to fall off. Right around week 10 or 9, 10, 11 last year, they were being known as they were on pace to be one of the top scoring defenses ever. And as soon as that fact was known in the media, all of a sudden there were injuries, and the play just went downhill, and they limped into the playoffs and one and done. And I would just rather just keep this one bottled up. Let's just play tough. Let the nation talk about Tony Romo's pinky. Let them talk about what contract Matt Castle is going to get next year, and then we'll just keep racking up wins while they're worried about everybody else.
Well, that sounds like a good plan and maybe a good place to end it for now. IC, thank you very much for your time. Thank you much for your insights, and I look forward to talking to you after a Steelers win and a mini bye before the New England game.
Always a pleasure, B. You got the best show going on the net. Thank you very much.
That's because you're part of it. Thank you, IC. And we're back. It's time now to go to our NFL pick section with FC and Hardnosed. And you guys will be happy to know that last week, FC, you were 4-4. Hardnosed, you were 4-4, so don't gloat. But I can gloat because I was 5-3. Thank you very much.
It is.
If I wasn't 6 games behind at the start of the day, I'd feel better about that. So after last week's games, the leader is still Hardnosed at 37-27. FC, you're 2 games behind, 35-29. I'm 1 game behind you at 34-30. So
I would like to quickly say that we are all kicking Chris Berman's ass in the pick segment and kicking the shit out of everybody on inside the NFL. I actually took notice of that. So I would like to congratulate Hardnosed on his 3/4 of the season victory, and he will choke.
He's going down. All right, well, we start with a couple of 6-4 teams. New England Patriots visiting the Miami Dolphins, the surprisingly 6-4 Miami Dolphins. And I think this week it is your turn to start Hardnosed.
I will take the Miami Dolphins. All of a sudden, people in New England are talking about the idea of franchising Matt Castle and packaging him for draft picks, and I don't see it. I'm not a believer in Matt Castle. I am a believer in the fact that the Miami Dolphins can find a way to score enough points to win ball games, and I think they'll do the same thing on Sunday. I'll take the Dolphins.
FC, where do you think Matt Castle ends up next year?
I believe Matt Castle ends up at Taco Bell.
I set you up. I knew it was coming.
I know. You knew I was going to come with something, pal. I actually agree with Hardnosed. The Patriots, I believe Ty Warren is going to be out again this week, and they can't stop the run. Gerard Mayo is one of the greatest tacklers I've ever seen 15 yards downfield. He did make a huge hit, but, I mean, he can tackle a guy 15 yards downfield. He can give Larry Foote lessons on how to, jump on and take a ride. I definitely like the Dolphins. Dolphins' defense is fantastic. Langford and Philip Merling are just 2 great rookies that go unnoticed by most football fans. They're making plays for that defense, and I'll definitely take the Dolphins.
Well, I noticed we all picked New England last week, which was the kiss of death, and I'm going to pick Miami, so I suppose that's the kiss of death for them too. But I think it's the biggest game of the year for Miami. It's pretty much their season. I think if they can go to 7-4, they got a pretty good chance of being a playoff team, which is amazing considering where they were last year. Game number 2, the 5-4-1 Eagles at the 6-4 Ravens, and we'll start with UFC.
I'm going to take the Ravens. I don't really want to, but I watched that Bengals-Eagles game, and wow, the Eagles' third down offense is worse than the Steelers. I think they were like 3 for 17 on third down conversions. The Eagles are falling apart. Andy Reid should be fired at the end of the year. So I'll take the Ravens and hold my nose as I say that.
What about you, Hardnosed?
I will take the Eagles simply because, the Ravens they had as many problems as I can imagine a team having this past weekend. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't run the ball. They've got those shoddy corners on the outside. I just think they're a prime team to fall apart. Really hesitant to pick the Eagles because obviously, tying the Bengals might be the worst thing you can do in sports. But, I think they've got enough depth at wide receiver that they can take advantage of the lack of depth that Baltimore has at cornerback and come out with a win. Pressure Joe Flacco a little bit, maybe get to him a couple times and make him make some mistakes, which he certainly did last week. So I'll take the Eagles.
Let's see. Well, I've gone back and forth on this. I'm going to take Baltimore only because I don't have a good feeling to take either team. So I'm going to go with the home team. So how's that?
Pretty much what I did. There it is.
The number 3 game. This would be the 5-5 Minnesota Vikings at the 4-6 Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll start with you, Hardnosed.
Oh boy, making us pick this one. I'm going to go with Minnesota. Really for no apparent reason. I took Jacksonville against Tennessee last week. They made me look good for about, 23 minutes, and then it all fell apart. I think that's the team that's in the tank, and I think Minnesota at least still has a chance to get into their divisional race, whereas Jacksonville, they're practically mathematically eliminated from division contention in the 10th week. So we'll take the Vikings.
FC, how about you?
I will take the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kevin Williams, Pat Williams, suspended 4 games. Jared Allen, $25,000 fine, appealing his 1-game suspension, should come down today. I just don't like the Vikings offense other than Adrian Peterson. So, in Pocket Hercules, little Maurice Jones-Drew has found his way in the second half of the season, so I'll take the Jaguars.
Yeah, I don't really like the Jags, but the Williams brothers being out, or Williams, quote, brothers, being out is enough reason for me. I'll take Jacksonville. Let's see, 8-2 Panthers at the 6-4 Atlanta Falcons. Another kiss of death game where we all picked Atlanta last week, and that was our lock of the week.
Yep.
Goes to show. Yeah. So, FC, you get to decide which one of these teams is a bigger pretender.
Oh, God. This is really going to be probably the best game of the week, I really think. Because I believe the Falcons were for real. They let Denver off the hook and finesse their way to a victory. I really like Carolina. I'm going to take the Panthers begrudgingly just because of the 1-2 punch of Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, and hope that I'm right.
Hardnosed, what about you?
I like both these teams. I think they're somewhat similar in that they've got double-headed rushing attack, spread the ball around to their receivers, have resurgent defenses after being down a little bit last year. I'm going to take the Panthers to come in and give the Falcons some trouble at home. Carolina really hasn't put together a complete game this whole season, despite playing some really good football in spurts. Last week, you had 2 running backs go over 100 yards, but you had a quarterback who only threw for about 90 yards. So they haven't put it together. I think they need to put it together this week to really get a stranglehold on that second seed or the first seed even, and in the NFC. And I think they'll go into Atlanta and take care of the Falcons.
Did either of you guys see the end of the Atlanta-Denver game last week?
Roddy White draw.
Well,
yeah, I did.
The play and the throw that Matt Ryan made at the end of the game there, where it ended up being just outside the end sideline for a touchdown. No, it would have been a touchdown, but it couldn't get his second foot in or whatever that was.
Right, Roddy White.
That throw was unbelievable. I mean, he put it on a dime on a run on the last second 4th down play or whatever that was. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I have Roddy White in fantasy, so I'm not going to throw him under the bus because he's been a hell of a wide receiver this year. But the Falcons should have beat Denver last week.
Yeah, it was a
that
tough.
should have been a win for all of us.
It would have been a tough play. In fairness, I just was amazed at the throw.
Right.
Really impressed.
I
Although I like both teams, I think this game's a little bit more important to Atlanta, and I think that might be the difference in the game. They're playing at home. They're coming off a loss that they probably should have won. The Panthers have a couple of. They have at least one game in hand in the division. I think that's maybe enough edge psychologically for the Falcons to hang in there and try to win a big game. So I'll take Atlanta. Number 5, that'd be the 9-1 New York Giants, the number 1 team in football, at the 7-3 Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to have to start with you, Hardnosed. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll take the New York Giants. I know the Cardinals are playing some good football right now, and they're getting a little bit of national press. But if you look at their 3-game or 4-game winning streak right now, they've beat Seattle, San Francisco, St. Louis.
The Western Pennsylvania School of the Blind and Deaf.
Exactly. They've played absolutely nobody. Actually, it's just that 3-game winning streak. So they basically beat the shoddy teams in their division, none of which probably are going to have the same coach next year. So I'm not a believer in Arizona. I think they're a one-trick pony. That trick that they pull is really good. 2 great receivers and a great quarterback pulling the trigger for now. But in the end, I think Kurt Warner's a guy that is more prone to mess up than to win ball games. And I don't think it'll be enough to get past New York Giants and their pass rush.
FC, I got a sneaking suspicion you disagree.
I do, actually. It's hard to believe, but no Brandon Jacobs, it looks like, this week. And I like Earth, Wind, and Fire, that 3 running back. That is the worst nickname for 3 running backs ever. But no Brandon Jacobs, it looks like, this week with a bad knee. And the Cardinals actually have 3 wide receivers. Steve Preston from North Braddock at Woodland Hills High School is he's turned into a very nice third option. And Anquan Bolden, despite missing 2 or 3 games with a broken face, still leads the NFL in touchdowns. And Larry Fitzgerald. Kurt Warner is a choking prick, and that's why I'm leery to pick Arizona. But the Cardinals have been tough at home, and Weisenhunt seems to have those boys playing pretty hard, and the Cardinals' defense has improved. So I'm going to go on a little line here, and I will take the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I kind of think. I mean, the Giants are a simple pick. However, I just think the situation in Arizona, the weather there, and the fact that they play well at home is just enough of a. I mean, the Giants. I can't imagine they're going to be 15-1 for the season. I guess they could be. They're definitely a solid team, but I don't think this is the week Warner chokes. I think he will eventually go, carry them down in flames, but I'll take Arizona this week. Number 6, that'd be the 6-4 Indianapolis Colts. Weren't they just 2-4 like a month ago?
It seems like it.
The 6-4 Colts at the 4-6 San Diego Chargers. I'll start with you, FC.
This is another ugly game. I get the ugly games. I know I shouldn't be complaining here.
They're all ugly games. I don't know if you know.
I know they are. I believe little Stevie Slayton put up about 170 yards on the Colts defense last week. The Chargers defense does not impress me, but the Colts offense definitely isn't what it was in the past. I'm going to go on a limb, and I will take the San Diego Chargers.
Ouch. Hardnosed, how about you?
It's a really tough game to call because, like FC said, Steve Slayton just ran all over the Colts, and you'd think that LT would do the same. But then again, Ben Roethlisberger just control past the San Diego Chargers to death, and you'd think that Peyton Manning would come out and do the exact same thing. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think you're going to see much defense on either side. I like the fact that Peyton Manning got Joseph Adai back a little bit last week, and just with that in mind, I'm going to take the Colts. I think the Chargers are probably feeling pretty bad about themselves at this point.
Is it Bob Sanders playing in this game?
Yes.
Then I'm taking the Indianapolis Colts. I think that might be the difference. He might be the only guy in either defense that you can really count on week to week, especially to stop a running game. I will take the Indianapolis Colts on the road. One more before the Steeler game. That'd be the 5-5 Green Bay Packers at the 5-5 New Orleans Saints. I'm actually surprised that New Orleans is 5-5. It shocked me to read that and write it. Hardnosed, we'll start with you.
Well, they beat Kansas City. And,
there's a marquee win for you.
New Orleans, it's
We play to win the games.
Except for when we're playing the games, then we don't win.
They beat San Diego. They beat Oakland. They beat San Francisco. There's a theme going on here, and that's that if New Orleans plays anybody good, they lose. So the Packers were decently impressive last week. Aaron Rodgers looks to be a little bit more together. Ryan Grant's starting to pick up a little bit. Well, maybe this is all the Packers' offensive line finally coming around, which I think it might be. So I will take the Packers to go down to New Orleans and win.
How about you, FC?
100% agree, and agree for the exact same reasons. Sean Payton he's a great offensive play caller, but he makes some awful decisions coaching a team, special teams, defense. He's responsible for the complete product on the field, and I have no faith in the Saints, so I'll take the Packers.
I'm shockingly going to go against the grain and pick New Orleans. I just feel like, your argument, Hardnosed, that you were using about every time they play a good team, they lose or whatever, and every time they play a bad team, they win. The problem is that you can't really even judge who's good teams or bad teams in the NFL.
That's
Everybody's
true.
mediocre to bad, with the exception of just a couple of teams. So I'm going to say New Orleans is at home, and their environment there is quite a bit different than Green Bay, and maybe that's the difference in the game. So I don't know. I'll probably live to regret that. Moving on to our top matchup of the week, obviously the 1-8-1 Cincinnati Bengals. They did not lose last week. They're coming in and trying not to lose again. And the 7-3 Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think FC, you get to go first this week.
Yummy. I expect the Steelers' defense. We'll start with that to score more than the Cincinnati offense, which is always a good sign. So I'm going to go with, we'll just start with this. I'll say the Steelers defense, 9, Bengals offense, 3. And I think the Steelers offense will manage to probably put, let's say, 21 points on the board. So we'll say Steelers 30, Bengals 3. I don't even think this game's going to be very competitive. I think you might see Ben out of the game at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Same thing with Willie Parker. I think the Steelers are going to go workmanlike game, smart game plan, get the starters out in the fourth quarter, take advantage of that 10 days rest, and prepare for the New England Patriots. That's not overlooking the Bengals. It's just the Bengals suck. And that's what I see in this game.
Hardnosed?
I think that it's going to be a tie.
I think you've been smoking angel dust.
No, not really. Although I hear that Mike Brown has instructed Marvin Lewis to play for more ties, because it's good for business because it keeps costs down, but at the same time keeps the interest high. No, I think the Steelers are going to absolutely demolish the Bengals tomorrow night. I think that everything is going to come together for this offense finally. I think you're going to see Ben being his accurate self that he's been these last two games. I think you'll see him continue to limit mistakes. I think you'll see him put the ball in the end zone a little bit. So only way to up his passer rating is to throw for some touchdowns. So it's about time he starts doing it. We're going to need it down the road when we start playing some better defenses. I think tomorrow night's the beginning of that. I'm going to say 37-7.
Sweet. I think you're going to see a very focused Steelers team, especially the offense. I think this is their week before a couple of big games where they can try to, not only I think they've righted the ship, but I think there's a chance to kind of work out the obstacles that have kept them out of the end zone. So I expect some scores for the Steelers. I'll take them in a big win over the Bengals. I noticed before the last Bengals game, I actually predicted a shutout, and I was thinking about that again, but they looked really good. They looked like they were going to shut out the Bengals for about half that game, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way. One point I wanted to add before we finished was, I don't know, have either of you guys actually attended a tie game?
No.
It's the damnedest thing. I went to a tie a long time ago, years ago, and the thing is that at the end of the game, just like the crowd sort of goes silent, and you either walk out of the stadium and you're exultant and you're screaming and woo, or you're walking out and you're sullen and it's terrible and you're so unhappy all the way home. And it was just the weirdest thing was walking out of the stadium and nobody had any emotion at all. It's like the tie sucked all the emotion out of the game. So hopefully we won't see another one of those again for another 10 years.
Maybe next year they'll go to a shootout.
Yeah, there you go. A hockey shootout. For the football game.
Kick field goals.
Both field goal kickers, yep. Getting out of the field.
I like it. Farther and farther away. Yep.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Well, Hardnosed FC, thank you for your insights, and hopefully talk to you after another Steelers victory in a week or so. Enjoy your Thursday night football, gentlemen. Thanks a lot.
There it is. Take care.
Take care. Have a safe trip, brother. Later.
Okay. Thanks. Later. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. On behalf of Iron City, FC, Hardnosed, SteelFury, and all the gang at SteelerFury.com, this is Bradshaw to Ben saying thanks for listening, and go get 'em, Steelers.
Steeler Fury. SteelerFury.com.